between 50 to 70% of the CEOs, they actually showcase a lot of like loneliness. They say lonely at the top. Have you ever felt lonely at the top?
No, not really.
This is Shock Life Confessions podcast with me, Reza Abraham. Our guest is renowned as one of Malaysia's top turnaround CEOs. At the age of 37 years old, he was entrusted with leading the revitalization of UEM Group, followed by successful turnaround at Telekom Malaysia, and finally Malaysia's largest publicly listed company, Maybank, transforming it to a regional banking group and a global leader in Islamic finance. In just a decade of visionary leadership, he transformed these diverse giants with thousands of employees into thriving and thriving entities. His journey continued with a public service as a senator and minister in the Prime Minister's department, subsequently assuming the role of the Group Chairman of PNB. Currently, he serves as the Chairman of Bursa Malaysia and the National University of Malaysia, UKM. So let's welcome our guest today, Sri Wahid Omar.
Well, thank you, Reza, for having me here.
It's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for being here. You know, over the past 1 decade, I've been involved in many rounds of engagement with different organizations, banking, non-banking, working with a lot of like C-suite, C-1, C-2. And one name that has been always come up whenever I ask them, like, you know, who is the one leader that it really inspired you and mold you to who you are or impacted your life somehow in your life and career? Your name has always been among those at least top 3 that is always come out. And one thing about you that whenever I ask them, like, so tell me one thing about Sri, and then humility was always one of the biggest word there. It was always like people say, like, you're looking for a humble leader, you should talk to Sri. And we all know, I mean, psychology shows that humility is one of those character traits that leaders basically develop it since they were a child, you know? So I would like to start the whole questions with you is like, how is your upbringing and where does this quality basically appear in your life?
Well, thanks, Reza. I guess you're too kind with your words in the first place. But I did come from a poor family. I mean, life was tough when we were young. And I guess coming from that background, you know, a family where you did not have many things will then give you that, I guess, basic qualities of being a humble person. And there's a difference between being inferior and being humble. So I guess being humble means that you realize that you must treat people with mutual respect. You have your feet grounded to the ground, and you know that you exist for a greater purpose in life rather than for your self-interest, right? And I think I've been fortunate to be raised in a family where my parents placed a lot of emphasis on good values, Islamic values, and that's something which I continue to uphold till today.
Sure. C.S. Lewis, he has this very famous quote. He said, humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It means that the world is not about you. It's about like understanding that not everything is about you. So what was the point you realized that, oh, being a humble actually, it really helps you in terms of your leadership as well? Has it been like you have seen or worked with some leaders that they showcase it, or what was your own reflection?
Yeah, so over the years, indeed, I've been fortunate to have worked with many great leaders. And this can be in the form of my immediate superiors. They were very kind enough to spend time to go through my credit memorandum, for example, and correct every single sentence, including grammar mistakes, instead of just throwing it back at me and for me to sort it myself. And that's when I realized that, look, if these people can afford you the time to coach you, to guide you, why can't you do the same with others?
Yeah.
And over the years, I've seen other leaders, again, how they behaved, how they negotiated. But I guess the biggest demonstration of the value of being a humble leader, people with humility, will be in coming up with solutions. Sometimes you will need help from many people because the problems are so complex, and there'll be times that you really have to back other people to get cooperation. And if you have to do that to get things done, so do it. And I noticed that I've been fortunate in all the assignments that I've been given that you mentioned earlier, whether it was at the UEM Group or Telekom Malaysia or Maybank. I found that when you are humble, people will want to help you. So they rally behind you, because some of those issues that we were faced with were so complex and it required a lot of support. For example, when it came to the renegotiation of the concession agreement for the toll highways, for example, it needed to be done in a manner which was very expeditious and within a timeline that was never done before. But Alhamdulillah, they were so supportive. Every government officers were so supportive that we were able to actually meet the timeline. So I guess that's the power of humility, I guess.
Yeah. So you always want to stay in a place where, because they say like it's not humility to discount your own abilities, right? So you're not discounting yourself, but also at the same time you stay humble.
Well, I mean, I think we all must learn that we do not know everything, right? And we need teamwork in order to succeed. And we need the people with other expertise to provide that support and input for things to get done. So I think that realization internally that you're not you're not as smart as some other people. We don't know everything, and therefore that will dictate the way that you behave, right? And again, when you are humble, you will get support from other people.
So who do you think impacted your leadership style the most in all the bosses that you have, the board member that you serve? Like who if you want to name like one or two?
Well, there's so many people who have helped me along the way. From my immediate superiors when I was at Ultra Merchant Bankers, for example, managers like Hodori, Hadi, Syed Abdullah, Zakaria, to the CEOs.
This is like what age you were?
Well, I was 24, 25 years old, and going up to 30 years old. And then we have the CEOs like Azlan Hashim, for example. Now Tan Sri Azlan Hashim. He was my boss at 3 places. At Bursa Merchant Bankers, FIMA, and also at the Amanah Capital Group. To people like Tan Sri Nur Muhammad Yaakob, for example, who was the advisor to the Prime Minister and later became the Minister in the Prime Minister's Department. And these are the people whom I work very closely with. And then you also have people like Azman Yahya and so on. So these are the various leaders that you work with very closely. And there are also some leaders that you watch from afar. So for example, during my early days, I was always inspired by people like Tan Sri Azman Hashim, Tan Sri Hanafiah Hussain, and so on. So these are role models that you saw from afar, and they inspire you as you grew up the corporate ladder, so to speak.
Okay, so you were 37 years old, and you have been entrusted with the task of becoming the CEO of UEM, and this is basically it's like a huge task. They're a massive organization. And I believe that, at the age of 37, a young leader and the people that you're working with, your circle, majority of them, like I assume that they are maybe even older than you, right?
Indeed.
So what was the challenge of dealing with the leaders who are way older than you, looking down as like, who is this 37 years old person, want to tell us what to do? So share a little bit about like, what are the key challenges you face and how did you manage to pull through it?
Right. So perhaps just to be clear, I'm an accountant, and as an accountant, my ambition was to be a chief financial officer of a major public listed company.
Sure.
So back in March 2001, I was offered the job at the Telekom Malaysia as a CFO, and to me that was great. But when the opportunity to be the CEO of UEM Group to spearhead the turnaround came, I did not hesitate to take on that challenge because, number one, I was familiar with the group, although it's actually such a big group, but they were one of my clients when I was in the banking sector before.
Oh, okay.
So there's that familiarity of the people and the issues that they were faced with. Secondly, it's about the core competency. So my competency was in corporate restructuring, M&As, debt restructuring, project finance, and so on. So that was exactly the skills required to turn around a UEM Group. And the third was the fact that I was young. So being 37 years old, I guess I was able to take on that risk or challenge. So I was telling myself, okay, why worry? I was young. Even if I were to fail, I could always go back to be CFO of another company later. So that's why I took on that challenge. Now, I think one of the things which you have to do is actually to be clear about your value proposition, what you bring to the group. And I was very clear with the rest of my management colleagues that I had no clue how to run a construction company, a highway company, or cement manufacturing company and so on.
Yeah.
But I was hired to address the debt burden that the UEM Group was facing and how to turn it around and be a profitable entity within a very short period of time. So for me to be able to focus on the corporate turnaround, financial restructuring and corporate restructuring, I needed the rest of the team members to continue to manage their respective companies well.
Play their roles.
So, yeah, so again, it's truly a teamwork. And when we got that clear in terms of the assignment of responsibility, accountability, and what value I would bring in, and it became very clear that they had to do a major part in running their respective operations well, so that we can actually then work on the corporate restructuring.
Sure.
Because if we were not able to succeed, then the whole group would crumble. So alhamdulillah, as it turned out, we all worked together very well. We played our respective roles, and we were able to come up with a solution, and we got all the help that we got from the shareholders, the board, the government, and our entire group employees, so that we were able to actually get in that case, Plus listed on the bourse, and thereafter we managed to actually bring down our debt level, and UEM Group became profitable within 2.5 years.
Wow!
And Khazanah doubled the value of their investments.
Sure. So, but I'm just curious here. Is that so? These are like big organizations. And I'm sure they have a lot of experts internally, or like they can just hire a consultant to come in and then just do it for them. So what was your differentiation strategy? Like what did you do that they couldn't do it beforehand?
Yeah. Well, to be fair, before they were taken over by the government through Khazanah and the special purpose vehicle of Dana Saham, I think the previous management were given 2 years to sort things out, but they tried, but they were not able to. They did not succeed.
Sure. And
because of the importance of the group to the market in terms of their exposure to the banking system, 24,000 employees, and UEM Group owning a number of significant national assets in the form of the toll highways and other infrastructures. The government then had to actually do something to actually take it over and help to restructure. So again, the point here is actually opportunities were given for the company to sort of on their own. They couldn't. That's when the government actually came in at the point in time. And so it was a collective effort. So I was just the person who was made responsible to coordinate things.
Yeah.
But the real input and support came from various people. So as I mentioned, from the government themselves in terms of their support to when we renegotiated the concession agreement. So what we did was to lower the toll rate and lengthen the concession period and change some provisions to make sure that the company was able to continue to increase the tolls in accordance with the concession agreement. And should there be any stoppages, then be adequate compensation and so on. So we needed this to be done before the IPO to get the confidence of the investors. Without this, investors wouldn't come in. Now, obviously, again, it needed the support from everyone, and we got the support from everyone. The shareholders, Khazanah, were great, the board, and the other team members.
Okay, so then you moved on to TM, then you moved on to Maybank, and these are like very, very different organizations. They're like completely different industry, obviously, different ball game. So I have like a couple of parts question here. So first is that how do you decide I'm done with this place, I've done my part, now I can move on to the next one? The second part is that what is your process for turning around? Because you're very known for the person who can go in and turn around the organization. And there are very few CEOs who can do that. So one is that basically there are some people that they would prefer to stay on and then just enjoy. You just build a house, and imagine you build a house and you sell it off.
Right.
Next, right? So how do you make those decisions, and what's your process of turning around? If you want to, I know there are many parts there, but
right.
What's the top three? What you walk in, okay, how do you do it?
Well, I must say it's all very much situational. So in the first place, when I moved from Telekom Malaysia to take on the CEO job at UEM Group, it was some sort of national service. And before I started the job, I had to seek the blessing from my former CEO and former Chairman of Telekom Malaysia. So one of the conditions imposed by my Chairman of Telekom Malaysia then, the late Sri Razif, was that, okay, it's national service, go there, but once you're done, do come back to Telekom Malaysia. So indeed, after 2.5 years, I actually went back to Telekom Malaysia.
That's settled.
And in Telekom Malaysia, the mandate was clear to transform Telekom Malaysia to be a regional telco with particular emphasis on mobile communications. So again, a very different situation because Telekom Malaysia was doing well, but it just needed the further boost in terms of expansion into the region. Right? So, and that's basically what we did. So, and then later when I went to Maybank, that was actually after we have decided to undertake the demerger of Telekom Malaysia into Axiata, as we know today, and Telekom Malaysia. And as we embarked on that, then Maybank Group actually approached me, looking for someone who can spearhead the transformation of Maybank to be a regional banking group. Now, again, all based on a very, very different situation. So I think the first step would be to really understand what is your mandate from the people who hired you, whether it's the shareholders or the board, right? And once you're clear about the mandate, then you will have to diagnose what's the current position of the company or the group. Then you get, what's the solution? So what are the strategies, action plans, initiatives that you need to do? And that's something that you can't do it on your own. You actually have to work with your team members, and you need to bring in even experts from outside in coming with some of the solutions. And once you have those strategies, action plans, and initiatives identified, you then need to assign accountability, who's supposed to do what, by when, and what's the expected outcome. So execution is actually key. So you need to track the implementation very, very closely. And then you need to communicate, right? So communication is very important all the way from the start to the end, to make sure that people know what you're doing, making sure that people know where we are in that journey. People know what they did, how they contributed, and what's actually the outcome. And then with that, you're then able to follow through all the way until you succeed.
You make it sounds very easy.
Well, I think the concept is easy.
Yes.
So actually doing it is not. When you have to execute all the plans, right? So coming up with the plans actually is
everybody can do that.
Yeah.
I think
But
who was it like
stuff,
they say like, you know, execution eats plan for breakfast, you know. So it's all about execution.
And I think we must all acknowledge the fact that you can never come up with a perfect plan, right? So along the way, you thought that by doing this, you get this outcome. But sometimes the outcome is only half of what you expected. Then you need to make adjustments. So you tweak whether you don't have enough resources, you need to put in more resources, or do you do something else completely? So that's actually the continuous appraisal that you need to do and make adjustments as you go along.
Okay. So do you have like an A-team, Avenger team when you go in? Or it's more of like, you know, so you try always to utilize the majority of the resources that you have. Okay, who do you bring in? Like when you go for a turnout?
Right. So in all my assignments, I would normally go alone. So just
only yourself?
Well, I mean, I would bring my driver. So I did not even bring my secretary. So
wow.
I think the idea would be to utilize whatever resources that you have within that organization.
Not even your left and right hand?
So the only one person which I brought in was when I left government. So when I joined PM Group, I needed someone to help me with my networking with the government side. So I brought along my SUSK, one Asbadi. So that was needed. So that was the only time I brought someone with me. But that's actually just alone. But the other would be, I guess, two things. So, for example, talking about the office support, your PA. So if you're going to bring your own PA from outside, you can't move fast because you have to wait for your PA to get acclimatized with your new organization, right? So that will slow you down. And of course, when it comes to the other talent, I think it's important for you to acknowledge that there are good people inside your new organization.
Yes.
You need to get to know them better. You then also need to assess the fit within the context of your vision and mission, and their core competency and the role that they can play. And I think it's important to put them in the right roles. And once you're there, once you get to know your people better, then you'll be able to identify where the gaps are. And that's when you bring in your reinforcements from outside.
Sure.
Yeah. So, for example, when I moved from Telekom Malaysia to Maybank, so one of the, I think we have many great people in credit, corporate banking, and so on. But there were a couple of areas where we felt that the Maybank could do with a lot of strengthening. Well, three areas rather. One is in international operations, secondly in finance, and third in investment banking. So, for example, those were the new resources that we brought in. The rest were actually about using and utilizing the existing people. And naturally, there will be opportunities for rejuvenation because people do retire. You have that natural attrition. Right? So as they retire, that gives you the opportunity to promote people either from internally or you bring in again new talent from outside. So
there is this study have done, I think, by Harvard Business Review that they found like between 50 to 70% of the CEOs, they actually showcase a lot of like loneliness. They say lonely at the top. Have you ever felt lonely at the top?
No, not really.
So even your first assignment as a CEO, UEM?
No, because you're surrounded with your colleagues, right? So,
but the circle of the people that you're talking to or you can talk to, it would be
a lot. So in my case, I had my fellow board members. I've got the shareholders whom I can talk to. I've got my fellow management colleagues and my staff in my office as well. So no, actually, and also the other professionals that you hire, you deal with your auditors, and accountants, your lawyers, and so on. I think when you work closely with people, I mean, they become your friends. And so,
and I think that's one of the strength of you as well. Even like, I can share with you a couple of examples. I have very, very close friends in Maybank. I have very, very close friends in PNB. And they were saying like, even when you were the chairman of the PNB, you really like go in different floors, shake hand with people. I heard the story like, you buy like those Turkish cherries for them. So they remember that they were saying, and even when I was observing you, walking to the room here, you all shake hand with everyone. You were not like the stranger to anyone, It's like that personal relationship, it's something that is really, really standing out.
No, I don't know. To me, it's just natural.
But how do you develop that? Were you like this? Were you like friendly, like
I
all
guess,
the time?
Yes, I guess maybe from young. So in school, in the kampong, in the village, right?
So that's actually is a challenge of some CEOs as well. Because sometimes you're very friendly, you're very likable. But you also, at the same time, you have to be firm, decisive, and you have to make tough decisions. So how do you find a balance between these two?
Well, you can convey your message without raising your voice, without being difficult. So I think, to me, actually, when you're calm, you interact with that person. When you convey your displeasure, I mean, they will get it, right? So, I mean, you don't have to necessarily shout or raise your voice. In fact, I find that sometimes when I've seen leaders, when they're angry, they raise their voice.
Yep.
And I could see the subordinate just shut off your
yes.
So they were just hearing noise, right? So they were not getting it. And I think it's better for you to convey your displeasure in a calm and collected manner, and they'll get it, right? And of course, saying something without following up with action will be meaningless too. So if you say, please improve, and then if they don't improve, you don't do anything about it, then of course, yes, okay, they'll just dismiss you. It's just all talk, and they will see you as a weak person.
So you have to keep your words.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I think at the end of the day, also you make sure that you provide them with guidance. So, okay, how can you improve? So I think it's important. At the end of the day, I always believe that every single person will want to be a good person if they can help it. And I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we provide that pathway, that guidance for them to be able to improve themselves.
One of the toughest tasks of leaders, which I personally came across a lot, it might sound funny, but I have met CEOs, which I was going through executive coaching with them, and I told them like, you need to give this person a feedback. And he looked at me straight and said, Reza, I would rather fire this guy than give him a feedback. So giving a feedback is a very difficult task.
Indeed. Yeah.
Especially at the C-suite, at the CEO level, who's your inner circle, C-1 board, right? And giving a feedback is one of the toughest tasks. Asian context, you add into it, we don't like feedback. We think feedback is always a negative thing, because we only hear negative feedback. What is your process of handling a feedback? If you want to break it down for someone at the C level, want to know like how Sri Wahid Omar provide feedback, what's your process look like?
Well, I always find appraisals being the toughest assignment. So annually, semi-annually, every 6 months you do your appraisal of the staff, right? I always find it very, very challenging, right? Because you're dealing with that personal interaction. How do you tell a person they are doing well or not well, and so on? How do they improve? Again, I struggle with that. And of course, you also have to be very objective. So everything is relative between one person and another. Right? So either that you're only dealing with one person, so you are praising a group of people. So I guess the approach which I've taken in the past has been, I would ask them to do their self-appraisal first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can you?
That's a clever yourself? Step, yeah.
And then so when they come to you, so they would have done their self-appraisal. Then you can compare it with your own assessment, right? Then there'll be times when it'll be spot on. So they're honest about their own performance, and that'll be very easy. So even if they rated themselves low, they go, okay, I'm glad that you recognize that this is actually one of your weaknesses, and therefore let's talk about how we can improve it, right? There'll be times then you have an employee who's always overrated. Then say, okay, you think that they are okay out of scale of 5, it should be 3, but they will rate themselves as 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
Then you have to actually tone down a little bit. So that's a bit more difficult, right? But I think giving people the opportunity to undertake that self-appraisal is actually very important to me. And then and things are based on facts anyway. So you have your KPIs. But I think it's also important beyond the achievement of the numbers. You really have to look at the factors that contributed towards that outcome, right? Because sometimes the target set was actually a bit low. Sometimes it was tough and you put in all the efforts, but there were other factors, external factors, that resulted in that person not being able to achieve the KPI, the key performance indicator. And I think that's something you actually have to go through, and don't just take the numbers as given, right? So understand the costs, as in CAUSD.
Yeah. But how do you do it for someone who is in a higher position than you? You can't ask them to self-evaluate themselves.
Well, you do the 360. So I think there's a conversion in terms of feedback. So to me, so this is the thing. So I've gone through that 360 feedback. I've got my views. Conceptually, sometimes it sounds good, right? But in reality, sometimes the outcome is actually not as what you desire.
Sure. So in one of the things that in most conversation always came about was that the energy, the stamina, and how hardworking you are, So how do you make sure you find a balance that, one, you don't burn out your team? Because like I was watching one of your interviews, like during Maybank time, especially in the first 1 year or 1.5 years, you guys were working average daily around 12 to 18 hours.
12 to 16 hours.
16 hours, okay. Like I give discount 2 hours here. So, but that's a lot. That's a lot every day. And I mean, if you're dealing with a bunch of young people, it's doable. So you also need to consider these are like family people and so on. So how do you find the balance there?
Yeah, it's very much based on needs. So in that situation at Maybank, we had huge challenges, 3 in particular. One was in respect of following through on the 3 major acquisitions that had some controversies in terms of valuation. So we had to renegotiate one of them, for example. So it was the global financial crisis period. So a lot of risk management, mitigation efforts needed to be done. And third was about the underlying performance, when we were not performing as well as our competitors who were growing by 20% per annum, when we were growing by only 5% per annum. And I think we first got everyone to recognize that we really had to do something in order to overcome those challenges. And we also agree that we don't want to be relegated to number 3. So once you get that conviction, commitment from everyone that we must do something, and you come up with the performance improvement program, and you assign responsibilities, and you track the execution, and then you undertake project assessment about how well you're doing, and we adjust the courses accordingly. And you also provide recognition in terms of once you're able to actually achieve that intended outcome, you provide some interim reward. So that would give them that motivation that you're on the right path. And then, I'm also getting some benefit from it. So I think, yes, lots of hard work, but when you tie it down to your original purpose and target, and then you accord the necessary recognition, I guess that enabled them to provide that extra effort, I suppose. But having said that, we all know that, yes, you can do it for 6 months, 1 year, or maybe 18 months. But to go beyond that, it's actually tough, right? So I think that's why you really have got to address the fundamental issues, your organization, and going back to your purpose as well. So when you do things anchored on purpose, and you have a streamlined organization, clear assignment of accountability, then it will make your life much easier. And that's what I meant by after 18 months, so we were able to actually manage our time better. We do not have to work 16 hours anymore, so maybe 12 hours. That's okay.
So that's where you get your work-life balance back.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I think Jack Welch would say, like, it's not work-life balance, it's always work-life choices that you make.
Right.
Yeah. So to finish things off, we have a very quick game. It's called Final Confessions.
Right.
Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you any corporate-ish questions. So it's going to be like easier one. And you need to answer it as fast as possible.
All right.
Okay? So what is the best advice you have ever received?
Gosh, make decision.
Make decision, even if it's a bad decision.
Right.
What's the worst advice you ever get?
Take your time.
Okay. What is your secret to success?
Work hard and work smart.
And what's your secret to failure?
Procrastinate.
What's your favorite company turnaround?
UEM Group.
What is your boardroom pet peeve?
When the systems don't work.
Is there any company that you dream to turn around it one day? Or maybe even the past you wanted to do it?
Yeah, some of the Western-based financial institutions.
Okay. What's your favorite work destination? Traveling for work.
Jakarta.
Jakarta. Okay. What's your favorite holiday destination?
Anywhere in Malaysia, Langkawi, Kota Kinabalu, Kuching, JB, Kuantan, Penang.
Okay. Is there any favorite CEO you have? It could be locally or internationally. Yeah.
Well, domestically, my former boss in 3 places. Tan Sri Abdul Wahid Hashim.
Okay. And what's your top productivity hack?
To-do list.
Do the to-do list.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any book that you think every leader must read?
No, I enjoyed the Blue Ocean because that really opened up my mind. Yeah.
Okay, great. So my last question for you is this one. If you were given the chance to become the Prime Minister of Malaysia instantly, with all the power to get anything done, executed instantly, so what would be the one change you ask for?
To be clear, I have no such aspiration. I'm not into politics.
Yeah, that's a total different podcast by itself.
But I guess I suppose my request to all Malaysians would be to really work towards achieving our national goal, right? Our national aspiration to be a prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable nation, right? And for all of us to do our respective parts. There'll be challenges along the way. There might be political issues and so on, but don't worry about them. We all have our respective roles. If we can do what we can within our circle of influence, be constructive, be helpful, and always anchored by our Rukun Negara, not just the 5 principles, but again, more importantly, the objectives of being prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable. And I think, inshallah, this country of ours, Malaysia, will go a long way.
Thank you very much, Tan Sri, for being with us.
Thank you, Reza.
So guys, thank you very much for listening to us. Till our next episode, stay legendary.